So let's start with discussion of assignment 1. Assignment 1 is officially posted today because this is the time when I discuss it. Assignment 1 will be due on Saturday next week. It is midnight on Saturday, between Saturday and Sunday next week. And it doesn't mean that I encourage you to work on Saturday, not at all. I encourage you to start working on the assignment as soon as you can and finish it as soon as you can. But extra Saturday, like weekend time, it's only for like a spare time if you really need it for some reason, like fixing last moment issues. So I highly encourage you to start working on assignment as soon as you can. It will help you to be more comfortable with time. So if something goes wrong, you have time to resolve it. So what is assignment 1 is about? If you took Android course, you will realize it is the same stuff, but for different system. It is for web programming, so you cannot really copy paste your Android code at all. And in Android it was in Kotlin, now it is in Java. So, but before we discuss actual problem, what I'm asking you to write, let's review what we see on the screen. So it is absolutely good idea to read everything from top to the bottom carefully before you start writing any code, so that you don't waste your time by doing something which is not required or missing something which is required. When we write, when we grade assignments in any course, even humanitarian assignments like, I don't know, English literature, history, it will always, grading will be always based on 2 factors. Of course, 2 factors split it into subcategories, but in general, 2 factors. One, it is amount of the work done, and second, demonstrated expertise in this particular area, like you demonstrated your knowledge and you demonstrated your skills. Amount of work done is not enough to get decent grade in any course. But demonstrated expertise requires some work done, because you cannot demonstrate it if very little is done. So they are both related. Like, for example, if you submit an essay for, I don't know, history class or English literature class, and it is extremely long, but kind of messy inside. It's not guaranteed that you will get decent grade for this case, although if it's long, it definitely proves that a lot of work is done. So a lot of work is done, it's not guaranteed to get a decent grade, but what is necessary, it is both reasonable size of work and demonstrated expertise. And in addition, when we grade assignments in programming, there are additional difficulties in grading. What are they? If program is not compiling, you will get a lot of underlining in red, and from the grading point of view, it is hard to figure out how many mistakes in the code unless you fix all, because it will be always a lot of underlines. And the same, if program is crashing, it's hard to figure out how many issues are causing the crash unless you fix it all. Or in this case, if we go with fixing all possible issues in every assignment that is either crashing immediately or not compiling, it will take hours to grade such assignment. And this is practically impossible. It's practically impossible to get a fair grading if we have to count mistakes. So I'm using the following logic. If you cannot make your program not to crash, it means you demonstrated that you don't have debugging skills. So this is my rationale. I'm expecting that you master some debugging skills during exercises, during your work on assignment, so you can debug it to the point that you can compile and it's not crashing immediately at least. And when I grade it, I will grade it based on how much is actually working. And after this, I look through the code and I will make sure that there's nothing absolutely wrong in the code. So it should be reasonably well organized, but I won't be absolutely picky about that part. It should be reasonably well organized, following naming conventions, and output should look reasonably well on the screen. So it's basically grading is based on functionality that you successfully implemented. Otherwise, it's absolutely taking insane amount of time. It's practically impossible to do. So, as usual, you can submit it up to 72 hours with penalty. It means if it is due Saturday night, you can submit it up to Tuesday night. I do require you to use Git. How often? Please commit every small accomplishment, and what is small accomplishment, it is your decision, essentially. It is something that you don't want to lose if you accidentally break your code. So if you code, like you spend like 15 minutes on coding, and you probably did something useful in 15 minutes, so just commit it so you don't lose it if you accidentally break your code by making changes that you cannot revert. So for these reasons, excuses like it was working, but I did change it a little bit, and now it is crashing. It's not really an excuse because you can always click rollback button. So for this reason, if you proceed in steps, like you do something, you check, it compiles, it does some output or whatever, shows something, not crashing, commit it. Add something, check it, not crashing, doing something useful, commit it. And if it starts crashing, try to fix it first. And if you cannot fix it, just roll back. So this way, it won't be an issue that it suddenly starts to crash. So for this reason, Git is extremely important, and you are practicing in some software that is absolutely useful to know. What is I will use exactly the same system as described to grade it: IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate, Spring Boot 2.7, Java 11, and if it doesn't work on this combination, I will assume that it just doesn't work, because it's impossible to check all possible combinations. And this is it, and I will use also Google Chrome to display your pages. So please use this combination, at least to test your code. When you develop your code, use whatever is more comfortable to you. But for testing, please check that one, that it works fine, so you can avoid any surprises. So what is the problem? So description of the problem is like in Android course, but since it's totally different language programming, totally different approach of programming, it's just the same description, but you cannot copy paste that. So what is it about? You need to imitate some simplified game from TV show. So assuming it was some game, but eventually some player became leader, and now the player needs to pick up a prize. So game host just brings several boxes, closed boxes, and ask player just to select the box, not knowing what is inside. And after a box is selected, game host will open the box, and here's the prize, here's, I don't know, tickets to Miami or whatever in this box, but let's see what this other boxes contains. One box is empty, the other box contains iPhone, another box contains 8 candy bar, whatever, just different value prices, and this is it. Okay, so you need to imitate this using input page and output page. In the input page, you may show several radio buttons labeled like box 1, box 2, box 3. You can also display image of a closed box next to radio button. Why not? You can. It's not difficult to do. And once user selects some radio button next to some closed box, click OK, and it shows next page. On the next page, it says you selected box 2. This box 2 contained iPhone, congrats, you got iPhone, but other boxes contained the following, and you would print it using loop, content of all boxes, starting with 1, ending how many, and will reveal the content. And this is the end of the story, and you get button, play again, so you go back to the first page. Please use some images, not necessary images for the content of the boxes, but any images, so I know that you know how to display image on the page. Okay. So about design, display your name in the footer, so it will be easier to create and plus kind of nicer. I use style sheets, not trivial one, but change something like font, colors, fonts, maybe some, I don't know, some formatting, whatever you prefer. In style sheets, pick sensible sizes of fonts. Use some images on the pages. You may change background to show you some expertise in handling CSS. Besides showing some expertise in handling CSS that I don't grade it in particular here, I'm just grading that in fact that you know such thing exists and you can change it. I also will grade that you link it correctly to your page. Because if you don't link it correctly, it won't work. So another thing, I will check that you can handle CSS, so you can change it, you can put something, change default behavior, and you can link it correctly. This course contains word design in the title of the course, Web Application Design Implementation. I understand this design as design of the application, not design from artistic point of view. I cannot really grade it from artistic point of view because I'm not artistic at all, and I'm not good in it. So, but what I expect from you is that you need to demonstrate your skills that you can customize stuff on the screen. Maybe it's not making this artistically pretty, but at least not default. Okay? So this is what I want. And if it is artistically pretty, from artistic point of view, yeah, this is great. But it's not required because not everyone is great in terms of artistic design of the stuff, right? So you need to demonstrate your skills that you can handle things and make it not default, but please don't make it ugly on purpose. Because it is possible to make ugly a screen on purpose, like, I don't know, evil pink background or whatever. So in this case, just exercise common sense, okay? So it is in terms of design. If you store content inside of content of the boxes or some values inside of the boxes in the array or in the list, it will be easier for you to print content of the boxes on the second page because you can run loops through it. So this is why I assume that you will use list or array to print content of the boxes on the second page. So how I would design the code. Okay, definitely the program shouldn't cheat, like if user selected box 2, the program will put something based on the decision of box 2 that it is 2, like put okay, let's make box 2 empty because user selected it. It shouldn't happen. So, but you need to, it's allowed for you in your code to make decisions about contents of the boxes afterwards, as long as it's independent decision. In this program, technically it is easier it's easier to design programs such way that program decides what is inside of the boxes, independently, of course, from user decision, but on the second page. Because this way you don't have to pass information between pages about content of the boxes. Okay? So this is how I would do it. User makes decision on the first page. First page sends data to controller receives the data. After this, system runs random number generation independently of user decision, obviously. Fill boxes with something. Use decision of user, okay, pick box 2, and after this it prints, you pick it box 2. Box 2 contains something and shows what it is, and content of all boxes printed by the loop. It is definitely not a cheating, but it's not in reality, because in reality, boxes are filled before shown to the user, right? But in this case, it's not, but who cares as long as it's independent from user decision, right? This would be a lot easier to code this way if you compare this with making decision about content of the boxes when you show first page, because this way you will have to preserve it in between. Okay. So this is a recommendation. And speaking about preserving in between, data in between, why it's complicated, let's discuss. This is web program. It talks to many people at the same time, to many browsers at the same time. And assume that many people, many browsers or many users play with the game. And content of the boxes for one user has nothing to do with content of the boxes for another user, because it's supposed to be random, right? So you need to store data not as a variable exactly. You need to store it per user or per browser. This makes it more complicated. We will learn how to store data per browser, per user, but it will be in the next week. So this is why I'm saying do not fill boxes with data at the first page, because you will have to face the issue that you need to store data between pages. And this kind of storage of the data between pages is supposed to be per user. But you have one program that talks to many users. So it's a decision that you don't know how to do. Okay? It's a challenge that you don't know how to resolve at this moment, because we didn't discuss it in the course. All right? Questions? Now, additional thing that is related to it. It is, let me open project that it is second project that I will be discussing today, but it is good to discuss this issue that I already touched. What is the issue? The web program talks to many browsers at the same time. This is the issue. So let me open some project, and it is paper, rock, scissors project that I will be discussing today. It is the second program that I will discuss. But since it's related to what I already mentioned, let's talk about it. So I will start paper, rock, scissors project, and I will show what is going on. It didn't, okay, here it is. Predictably, it asks you to choose paper, rock, scissors. You choose something like scissors. Yeah, I choose scissors. It's a web program. You choose paper, you choose rock, somebody else choose scissors too. Random choices, right? And when we click play, it's supposed to generate different pages to different users that match your choice, obviously, not somebody else's choice, right? Plus, your choice shouldn't conflict with my choice, correct? So, this is additional challenge. And web project, web application is serving pages concurrently at the same time. So pages are generated literally maybe at the same time, overlapping time. So how it is achieved? How it happens that there is no conflict between my choice and your choice and somebody else's choice, and how it happens that generated page is matching your input, not somebody else's input. Okay? So this is the real question, right? Well, because it's a web application, it should behave consistently. So let's talk about it. So when a request comes to controller, so I got controller, game controller. First page is extremely plain in this case because it doesn't display any data. It just displays template, and rock is selected by default. So it shows first page is shown to everyone exactly the same. So it's not a big deal. But when a request for the first page comes to the server side will split process into threads. Thread it is
I found this on the web.
thread it is execution sequence, and processing of every request from every browser will happen in parallel, independently. Although it will, after receiving requests, so this will happen in parallel, independently. Processing of the request generates going through this code, taking template generation HTML, and HTML goes into browsers. So this part, if it contains variable will be copy, independent copy inside of this code. But this object controller itself will be shared between these threads. So everything that is in object like here, log, service, is shared. Okay? It means you cannot store any variable here that contains user-specific stuff. Because this way, or like a user choice. Because choice of one user is not the same as choice of another user. Right? So, bottom line, we cannot store any object here that is specific to a user, say, state. Okay? Because it will be conflict, different data in the same place, written at the same time, so we will get corrupted data. Not just its result is inconsistent, we will get corrupted data. Okay? Why it is not issue here? Because logger is designed in such a way that it is okay to be called from different threads at the same time. It is design decisions of the programmers who wrote it. It can record log from separate threads without corrupting data. In this case, it's okay. What about service? Service, I made this decision, I made this project, and this object will be shared. And technically, it is kind of making decision, right? What is paper? Who is the winner? Blah blah blah. So let's see if anything is wrong with this object. This object will be shared. Plus, any object that is marked controller or service will also be shared between different threads. In this case, it is shared because it's a service, and it's also shared because it is variable inside of the controller. So let's see what is anything wrong in this project, in this service that can compromise logical consistency of the code. This is shared. So it is random number generation, and if it is not written such way that it allows random number generation starting from different threads, it will break and it will not behave correctly. So how do we know that it's okay? We need to look up documentation, and if it is thread safe, it means it's okay to be called concurrently from different threads. So random object is thread safe by documentation. So I know it's okay to share it. So it is shared. Now, when we have some method call, variables will be duplicated, so there is no conflict inside of the variables. Inside of the methods, Okay? Because all variables inside of the methods will be duplicated. It will be separate copy. So in this case, when I receive some value here, choice values, blah, 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 it will be copy, separate copy. So it's not an issue. Okay? So when you write your code for web applications, please look through your code and make sure that you are not sharing anything that is not okay to be changed in parallel, because this way you can get logically inconsistent data because you share some data that shouldn't be shared between users. Plus, one more issue, you can corrupt the data by writing at the same time to the same place. Okay. Do you know what I mean, right? If two people are writing on the same paper at the same time, it will end up as garbage, right? So the same as writing two different threads writing into the same variables at the same time. It may end up with garbage inside of the variables. So for now, we just careful that for instance variables like globals here per object instance variables like that, we use either classes that are thread safe, like random or logger, or we refer to objects that are also thread safe, like I'm referring to this object service, and it is thread safe because random, and inside of this object, inside of these methods, by definition, all variables are copied separately, so there is no conflict between variables inside of the methods. Okay? So when you write your application assignment, look through your code, make sure that it is fine from this point of view. And in the next week, we will learn more about creating objects that are thread safe. So I already mentioned that random number generation is designed in such way by programmers, so it's okay to call methods of it at the same time so it doesn't break. Okay? So we will talk about this in the next week, how to create objects that are okay to run at the same time by different threads. Okay? It's not a big deal to learn, but it takes time, so it will be next week. But for now, just this information is enough to do assignment. So bottom line, do not share like business logic object like dice or whatever as instance variables of services or controllers. This will definitely break it, unless they design it specific way. Questions? Another thing to be aware when you do any web project is case sensitivity. Case sensitivity of file system of servers. When you test your project on Windows computer or on Mac, operating system is not key. Operating system is using file system that is not case sensitive by default. You can change for Mac by switching parameters of the system so you can make it case sensitive. I don't advise you. Another program can stop working. So don't do it. Don't play with it. But on Linux, it is vice versa. A file system is case sensitive by default. It means if you refer to template starting with capital I, like inputs with capital I, it must be the file name starting with capital I, not small one. If you do it on your a Windows computer, you may get warning or you may not get warning. It really depends on. IDE will give you warning, but it will still work. But on real life server, like most of them are Linux, it will just fail. It will not work because it's mismatching. For this key, for a Linux server, it will be different files because starting with different names. So be careful also about image names, style folder names, file names, because all of it, all these case or capital or small, is okay on Windows, on Mac, but when you upload it on a Linux server, most web servers are Linux server, it will fail, it will not find the file. Because for Linux, it will be totally different file. Okay. So this is major issue when we write programs on Windows and we upload it on Linux. So just be careful. Okay. Any questions about it? When I will grade your assignments, I will either use Windows or I will use Linux, where I specifically tune its file system so it's case not sensitive. So I don't want to surprise you because of it. I'm just assuming that you do your best, and I will see what you see. Okay? So I will not specifically grade it on Linux with case-sensitive system. But it is in your best interest to discipline yourself to watch case sensitivity. It is absolutely in your best interest, because otherwise, in real life scenario, your program will not work. Okay. So this it's supposed to be a good warning about it. Just remember about it, okay? So that is about introduction to assignment. Now let's open first example called Kitty message router, Kitty mail.